Okay, let's talk about lighting. The lighting style we were going for was a very high contrast image, which is known as low key, rather confusingly. And this was employed by all the old school Hollywood directors of photography, and we're very big fans of old black and white films and how they were lit. And more recently, it's being used by directors like Michael Bay and J.J. Abrams, who have a lot of contrast in their images. And we love this because we think it's very cinematic and it's very dramatic, and it adds a lot of depth to the image. So this is what we were looking for our trailer.
Why don't you tell them about chiaroscuro?
It's a bit long.
I don't know. Go on, give it to
Are you sure? All right, okay.
The whole 9 yards.
Oh god. Okay, here we go. I'll try and keep this brief. Basically, there's a thing called chiaroscuro. It's a lighting technique that's used by cinematographers, but it was actually pioneered by Renaissance painters. And the principle, quite simply, is using the contrast between light and dark to define form and shape of objects and characters. The word chiaroscuro is Italian, and it literally means light, dark. So with film shot in colour, the cinematographers can utilise that colour to define different shapes and different objects. For example, you could have a man in a blue suit standing in front of a yellow wall, and there would be a clear distinction between the background and him. However, if you were to turn that image black and white, he could very quickly just disappear into the background because you can't rely on that colour. So when films were shot in black and white, and they still are occasionally, it's very important that the lighting does the job of defining the shape, defining the form, and separating characters from the background. It's a technique we try and use as much as we can because we think it looks fantastic, but it was more relevant than ever on this project because although we were shooting in colour, the light we were using was going to be one colour, so the background and the foreground elements were going to be lit with the same coloured light. So again, we needed to make sure that this light was going to pick them off the background and really make them stand out on screen. So that was the practical reasons for using it, but we also think it looks fantastic, and this lighting style is synonymous with drama and in particular film noir, and we're very big fans, so we wanted to use it and we wanted to make sure that our images looked as good as they possibly could. So the basic rule of thumb is that to create contrast, a dark area should always be next to a light area. If we take a look at one of the images we got when we were shooting this and how we lit it, we might be able to demonstrate it. It might make a bit more sense. So we'll turn it black and white to make it a bit clearer, and you can quickly see thanks and you can quickly see that we all across this image we have black, white, black, white, black, white. So if we look behind our character here, this is Mark. If we look behind him in the background, you can see that the background is dark. Now to pick his face off the background, we make it bright, one of the brightest parts of the image, because we want your eye to be focused on that part. So his face then slowly drifts into darkness as his face casts a shadow across his neck, and in order to define the back of his head, we cast a bit of light on the background, so that now picks the back of his head up. And again, this continues in the foreground. Our female character here, Alexis, her shoulder cuts into Mark's neck almost, and the only reason we can see her shoulder is because it's bright and his neck is dark, and therefore it pops off the foreground. And at the risk of babbling on, if we just spool this on a bit and just have a quick look at her, here again you'll see in the far background we have light just behind her head. Now that's picking her hair off, and her hair is picking her face off. Her hair is dark and her face is light, and again her face then drifts into darkness. There we go. Okay, that's good. Yeah, one more time, Mark, sorry. That's it. Good stuff. That's perfect.
I was really curing that lead part of the curve.
And do one again.
Such a smoozer. It's actually how we see the world. No, that sounds ridiculous. If you actually take a look around your room where you're sitting right now, you will actually see chiaroscuro all over the place. It's how we see the world. It's the contrast between light and dark is what tells us that there's a new object there or whatever. So just have a look around your room, and I'm pretty confident that it will be all over the place, happening right in front of your eyes. And I think you'll agree, it just creates a very moody, atmospheric feel to the image, very cinematic. So it seems a bit complicated, but once you've got your head around it and you start to utilise it, you can really see the positive effects of using old techniques and tried and tested methods of defining shape and form and characters in your images.
Well, you're still awake out there, guys. That's okay. Thanks, Sand.
Yeah,
Thanks.
well, you asked for it. I did warn you.
No, it was good. Thanks
Sorry.
very much.
Well,
We're all
maybe we should do a proper tutorial on that.
maybe for
one
another
day.
video. You're all chiaroscuro experts now.
Yeah.
If we talk about the lighting a bit more, I know
Again?
the thing about night lighting like this is it's quite an interesting one, because what you're trying to do is simulate what it feels like at night rather than what the reality of night is. So there's far more light in this shot, and in fact in this entire short film, than there would be if it was pitch black at night in a room. But of course, if it was pitch black, we wouldn't be able to see anything. So
It would be a bit boring.
it would be a bit boring, but maybe better in the end. So what you're trying to do is kind of give the impression of moonlight, and to do that we use these little lights called dado lights, and don't be deceived by their size. They're very, very good, and we use them mainly when we're doing interviews, but they're very small, so that you can control the light a lot. They give out a lovely quality of light. They're not really used in feature films because films use much bigger lights, but when filming a scene like this, you may have big lights, but you'd eventually end up boxing them down to control them. So we just thought we might as well use these small lights. We got them available, and they really do help with creating this kind of high contrast, low key lighting effect.
What's going on, John?
Do some light as well. Like, just.
I don't know. You tell me what's
We're all
going on.
gonna die.
I don't know. Shh, just be quiet.
The other thing, I'm going to say one more thing about lighting. The reason why we needed lots of light on this was because lighting can affect your focus. If you don't have a lot of light, you have to open up your iris, which means you have a large aperture. And any of you guys out there remember those tutorials? It will decrease your depth of field, which makes it even harder to keep focus. And as we were using a DSLR, they have ridiculously low depth of field as it is, and
a tiny monitor
and a tiny viewfinder, because we didn't have all the accessories. So punching lots of light onto the scene meant that we could keep our iris as small as possible and keep our focus as critical as possible. And I think you're all bored to death now with chiaroscuro lighting.
I'm going to say one more thing.
One more thing.
Yeah, at the risk of.
Oh yeah, go on then.
I'm just going to say that if you don't have dado lights, don't worry, you don't need them. Go off to your DIY store or something, get yourself some stands, get yourself some lamps, and they'll do the job just as well.
So anyway, that's lighting done to death.
Lighting 101.
In fact, there is more lighting because there's the drumsticks.
Oh yeah, here we go. Next. What are the drumsticks, I hear you cry? Well, you're going to have to come
What are the
back.
drumsticks?
What are the drumsticks? You're going to have to come back for part 3 of this series of making of tutorials to find out. We're going to be talking all about practical light effects, like the abduction light coming from the window. So join us for part 3.
You copy me all the time.
No, I don't.